Brookwood was a small, quiet town, nestled between rolling hills and dense forests. Its charm lay in its tight-knit community, where everyone knew everyone else, and the peaceful surroundings made it a place that people were proud to call home. Children played in the streets, and neighbors often gathered at the local diner to share stories. For the most part, life moved slowly, and change came in small, careful steps. But tonight was different. The town hall was packed with residents, their voices buzzing with anticipation. A town meeting was scheduled to discuss an issue that had divided the community for weeks, an ongoing debate over school funding. The local school system was facing severe budget cuts, and a controversial proposal to reduce funding for after-school programs had sparked heated arguments between parents, teachers, and town officials. On one side, there were those who believed the cuts were necessary to balance the town's budget, while on the other, there were those who feared the loss of these programs would harm the children, especially those from lower-income families. Among the crowd was a man who had never attended a town meeting before. He had just returned from deployment, and was still getting used to the quiet rhythm of civilian life. A soldier, fresh from the front lines, he had recently moved to Brookwood, seeking a place to put down roots after years of service. He had heard about the meeting, and for reasons he couldn't fully explain, felt compelled to be there. He was an outsider in this town, but he couldn't shake the feeling that what was happening here, this decision that would affect the children and future of Brookwood, was important. Little did he know, the simple act of showing up that evening would change the course of the town's history forever. The town meeting room was packed, the air thick with tension. On one side of the room, a group of older residents, many of them retired or without children in the school system anymore, sat with crossed arms. They argued passionately that the proposal to limit funding for after-school programs was a necessary step for the town's financial stability. Their voices rang out in support of cutting the programs, claiming that the money could be better spent elsewhere, perhaps on maintaining town infrastructure, or keeping taxes low. "We can't keep spending money we don't have," one of them shouted, drawing nods of agreement from the others. Across the room, parents and teachers stood in protest. They were adamant that the after-school programs were vital to the children of Brookwood, especially for those from lower-income families who relied on them for more than just after-school care. "These programs are a lifeline," one mother, a teacher at the local school, said, her voice trembling with emotion. "They give children a safe space to learn, grow, and build friendships. Without them, many of these kids will fall through the cracks." The soldier, sitting quietly near the back, felt a pull in his chest. Though he was a stranger to the town, he understood the weight of this debate better than most. His years in the military had taught him the value of community, how a group of people, no matter their differences, could come together for a common cause. But here, in Brookwood, that unity seemed to be unraveling. He had seen communities divided before, over politics, over war, but it was always painful to watch. This debate, about the future of children in the town, felt deeply personal to him. The room became increasingly charged with emotion. People were shouting over each other now, their voices rising in anger and frustration. The mayor tried to regain control, banging her gavel, but it only caused the voices to grow louder. Some of the residents were so fervent in their beliefs that they were no longer listening to each other. They were simply waiting for their turn to speak. The soldier shifted in his seat, uncomfortable with the chaos around him. He had never been good at confrontation, but something inside him stirred. He knew that if this town was going to find a way forward, they had to start listening to each other, and to what mattered most. As the voices in the meeting room grew louder, the soldier's mind drifted back to his own small-town roots. He had grown up in a place much like Brookwood, peaceful, close-knit, and filled with neighbors who looked out for one another. It was a town where everyone knew each other's name, where you could count on a helping hand when you needed it most. He had always believed in the importance of community, of standing together to face challenges, no matter how big or small. It was a value instilled in him from a young age, one he carried with him even when he left to serve in the military. The flashbacks came in waves. He remembered the first time he'd lost a friend in combat. It had been a morning like any other, but when the news came, it hit him like a freight train. His best friend Charlie was gone, taken in an instant by a sniper's bullet. The pain of that loss was still fresh in his mind, even after all these years. He had learned to keep his emotions in check, but the truth was, the weight of that day had never fully left him. The soldier had spent the years after Charlie's death trying to make sense of his own grief. In the battlefield, They had relied on each other. Survival was never just about the mission. It was about the men and women by your side, willing to lay down their lives for one another. That sense of unity, that unspoken bond, was something he hadn't found anywhere else. It was something that had driven him through countless battles, but it was also the thing that made him realize just how precious unity truly was. He had never liked being the center of attention. Even in the military, he preferred to stay in the background, doing his part without seeking recognition. But as he sat there, watching the town tear itself apart over this debate, something inside him shifted. He felt a deep, almost painful connection to what was happening. He saw the same fractures here that he had seen in the military, differences threatening to tear a community apart. And he knew, deep down, that if he didn't speak up now, the town might lose what made it whole. His hands clenched at his sides, the weight of duty pulling him to his feet. It was time to do what he had always done, step up for the greater good, no matter how uncomfortable it felt. The heated arguments had gone on for what felt like hours. The room was filled with voices, each one trying to outshout the other, until finally, the town council member banged his gavel, signaling for order. "Let's have one final round of statements," he said, his voice strained from the chaos. "Each person will have a moment to speak, and then we'll vote on the proposal." The soldier sat in the back, his palms sweaty, and his heart pounding in his chest. He had been quiet the whole time, listening as the debate swirled around him. He knew what needed to be said, but the thought of stepping up to speak made his stomach turn. He had never been someone who liked to stand in the spotlight. He had always preferred to stay in the shadows, doing what needed to be done without drawing attention to himself. But tonight was different. He stood up slowly, feeling all eyes on him as he made his way to the front of the room. His boots echoed in the quiet hall, the sound strangely loud in the tense silence. When he reached the microphone, he hesitated for a moment, gripping it tightly as if it might slip away. He could feel the weight of the room pressing down on him, the eyes of every person in Brookwood trained on him. The silence was suffocating. He took a deep breath, his voice trembling as he spoke for the first time. "I'm not from here," he began, his words quiet but steady. "I've only been in Brookwood for a short time, but something about this town reminds me of the one I grew up in. A small town, where everyone knows each other, and looks out for one another, where community matters." He paused, his mind briefly drifting back to the towns he had known, the places that had shaped him. He swallowed hard, pushing through the knot in his throat. "I've spent a lot of time in places where people depended on each other, where we were forced to put aside our differences and work together. In the military, that's all we had, each other. We didn't always agree, we didn't always see eye to eye, but we fought for each other. We sacrificed for each other, because that's what you do when you're part of something bigger than yourself." His voice cracked, and he steadied himself, wiping a hand across his face to hide the emotion threatening to spill over. "The truth is, this isn't just about money or budgets. It's about what kind of community we want to be. It's about the kids, the future of this town. Are we going to be the kind of people who turn our backs on the most vulnerable, who can't find a way to support each other when it matters most? Or are we going to be the kind of town that pulls together, that sacrifices for the future, even when it's hard?" He glanced around the room, locking eyes with several of the parents and teachers who were still holding on to their hope that something could change. "I know what it's like to lose everything. I've seen it in war, but I've also seen what happens when people come together, when they fight for each other, when they refuse to let go of what's important." His words hung in the air, the silence in the room almost deafening. The soldier's chest tightened, and for a moment he feared he hadn't reached them. But then a quiet voice from the back of the room spoke up, followed by another. Slowly the murmurs grew louder, as if the entire room was taking a collective breath, absorbing what he had said. The soldier's voice grew steadier, as he continued, each word now feeling heavier, more intentional. "This isn't just about money, it's not about cutting costs or balancing budgets," he said, his eyes scanning the room. "This is about what kind of community we want to be. A town that turns its back on its future, on the kids who will grow up to carry this place forward, or a town that chooses to invest in them, to make sacrifices so that they have the opportunity to grow, to thrive, to build something better for the next generation." He paused, letting his words sink in, the room hanging on every syllable. The murmurs had quieted, replaced by a heavy silence. The soldier's eyes softened as he thought of the young child he had met during his deployment. "I met a little boy once, in one of the poorest villages I've ever been to," he continued. his voice faltering for a moment. He was only 10, but he had dreams bigger than anything I could have imagined. He wanted to be a doctor, to help people like his family, who lived in poverty. But the thing was, he didn't have the resources, he didn't have the support. All he had was hope, and the belief that one day, if he kept fighting for it, he could make something of himself. The soldier's voice cracked, and he took a deep breath before going on. That boy, despite all the odds stacked against him, kept pushing forward, and I promised him, when I left, that I would remember him, that I would never forget the determination in his eyes. I never found out if he became that doctor. But I'll tell you this, every time I look at the kids in this town, I think of him, and I wonder, are we willing to be the town that crushes those dreams, or are we willing to be the town that helps them grow? The silence in the room was deafening now. No one moved, no one spoke. The soldier's words had struck a chord, and for the first time in the meeting, the tension had lifted. Some of the parents were wiping away tears, and even a few of the council members looked visibly moved, their stern expressions softening. The crowd, once divided and loud, had grown quiet, as if the soldier's powerful message had forced them to reflect deeply on what was truly at stake. He stepped back from the microphone, his heart pounding in his chest. His words had been simple, but they had come from a place of raw truth. The soldier didn't know what the outcome would be, but as he looked around the room, he felt a sense of peace. He had said what needed to be said. Now it was up to the people of Brookwood to decide. The room remained still for a few long moments after the soldier's speech. The silence was heavy, almost sacred, as if everyone in the room was processing the depth of his words. It was clear that something had shifted in the air, something unspoken but felt deeply by all. Then, to the surprise of everyone, the mayor, who had been one of the strongest supporters of the funding cuts, stood up. She looked around the room, her face softening as she cleared her throat. "I've been thinking," she began, her voice tentative but growing stronger as she spoke. "When I first supported these cuts, I thought it was a simple matter of balancing the budget. I didn't truly consider what it meant for the kids, for the families who depend on these programs." She paused, her eyes scanning the crowd. "I thought it was just about numbers, about saving money, but I didn't think about the long-term impact. I didn't think about how these programs might be the difference between a child having a safe place after school, or going home to an empty house." The mayor's admission hung in the air, and for the first time, it felt like the whole room was exhaling together. It wasn't just a moment of reflection, it was a moment of transformation. The tension that had been so thick moments ago had melted into understanding. A parent, her face lined with concern, stood up next. "I have a son who relies on these programs," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "He's been able to stay engaged, to keep learning, to stay out of trouble. I never realized how much it meant until I heard that soldier speak. I thought about how my son's future could be affected if we don't find a way to keep these programs running." One by one, others began to speak. Teachers, parents, even residents who had no children in the school system, but still understood the importance of supporting future generations. The soldier's words had united them in a way that nothing else had. They weren't just talking about the budget anymore, they were talking about the heart of their community. The council members began to discuss alternatives. "What if we look for private donors?" one suggested. "Maybe we could apply for grants, work with local businesses to support the programs." Another council member added, "We could even host community fundraisers. There's got to be a way." The conversation turned from division to cooperation. For the first time that evening, the townspeople of Brookwood weren't at odds with one another. They were all working toward a common goal to find a solution that would ensure the future of the children in their town. The soldier had done more than just speak. He had sparked a change, one that would echo throughout the town long after the meeting ended. In the weeks that followed the meeting, the town of Brookwood began to feel a shift. The council, moved by the overwhelming response to the soldier's speech, passed a new law that guaranteed continued funding for after-school programs. It wasn't just a small victory, it was a promise to the children of Brookwood that their future would be supported, no matter the cost. The law included provisions for seeking private donors and applying for grants, ensuring that the programs would continue even during tough economic times. The soldier, despite his humble nature, quickly became a local hero. People weren't talking about his military service anymore, though that was still respected. Instead, they spoke of how his words had united a divided town. He had shown them the power of compassion, of seeing the bigger picture, and of fighting for something that transcended personal interests. He wasn't just a soldier, he had become a symbol of unity, of what it meant to put others first. The town began to look at him differently, not just as a newcomer, but as someone who had reminded them of their shared values. They saw in him the qualities that had always made their community strong: selflessness, sacrifice, and an unwavering commitment to one another. As the soldier reflected on the impact of his words, he realized something profound. Sometimes, the most powerful battles aren't fought with weapons or in faraway lands, they are fought in the hearts of communities, with words and actions that inspire change. His legacy in Brookwood wasn't one of military victory, but one of hope and unity. Years from that moment, the town would still speak of that evening, the night when one voice, one speech, changed the course of their history forever. As the soldier walks out of the meeting, he feels a peace settle in his chest, a peace he hasn't known in a long time. He knows his words made a difference, that he helped bring his new town together. Brookwood, once divided, is now stronger and more united. The soldier's quiet bravery, speaking out when it mattered most, became the catalyst for lasting change. The future of the town, and its children, is now more secure. The soldier leaves knowing that sometimes the most significant battles are fought with words, and today, he had won one for the heart of the community. As the soldier's words echoed through Brookwood, his quiet courage transformed the town, turning division into unity, and ensuring a brighter future for the children. His act of bravery, speaking up when it mattered most, reminds us all of the power of one voice to spark change. This story is a testament to the strength of communities coming together, even in the face of disagreement. If you were inspired by this soldier's impact, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of real change and the everyday heroes who make a difference. Together, we can all be the change our world needs.